I love the wind, the water, the earth, and the fire.
The courtroom falls silent as the judge delivers his verdict. Cesar Millan, world-renowned dog behaviorist, stands stoically at the defendant's table, his expression betraying none of the turmoil within. Outside, hundreds of supporters hold vigil, their signs proclaiming "Justice for Cesar" fluttering in the breeze. This court hereby sentences you to 5 years of probation, revokes your right to practice dog training professionally within Los Angeles County, and mandates the dissolution of your training center effective immediately. The judge announces, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. Cesar's attorney rises to protest. "Your Honor, the evidence clearly showed that Mr. Millan's methods saved that dog from euthanasia. The prosecution's edited video." "My ruling is final." The judge interrupts, slamming his gavel with finality that sends a collective gasp through the courtroom. As Cesar exits the courthouse, cameras flash frantically. Rather than ducking away, he faces the media scrum with the same calm, assertive energy he's always preached. "Today is a difficult day," he begins, his voice steady despite the injustice just dealt to him. "But I want my supporters to understand something important. This is not goodbye forever. This is not the end of my mission." The crowd quiets, hanging on his every word. "For 20 years, I have dedicated my life to rehabilitating dogs and training people. The methods shown in that edited video clip were taken out of context, presented without the hours of patient work that came before, and the successful rehabilitation that came after." A reporter shouts from the crowd, "Mr. Millan, how do you respond to accusations that your methods are outdated and cruel?" Cesar takes a deep breath, maintaining his composure. "My methods are based on understanding dog psychology, not human projections. What looks harsh to someone who doesn't understand canine communication can be exactly what a dog needs to break through a psychological barrier. Context matters, and context is exactly what was removed from that video." Flashback to 6 months earlier. Cesar works gently with a severely traumatized pit bull mix named Ranger that 3 other trainers had deemed too dangerous to rehabilitate. The dog, previously used as bait in fighting rings, bears physical and emotional scars that have made him reactive to human touch. "This dog has been through hell," Cesar explains to the owners, a couple desperate to save the animal they'd rescued. "His aggression isn't his fault. It's his way of protecting himself from experiencing more pain." For hours, Cesar sits near the dog without making direct eye contact, gradually moving closer until he's within touching distance. When Ranger finally allows a brief touch without growling, it's a breakthrough moment. But during a later session, the dog lunges unexpectedly when triggered by a specific movement. Cesar uses a brief corrective touch, a moment captured and later edited to appear abusive, stripped of all context, the hours of gentle work beforehand completely erased from the narrative. In the edited video, distributed by an animal rights group with connections to a corporate training franchise, Cesar appears to be provoking and then roughly handling a frightened dog. The reality, that this was a split-second intervention to interrupt a dangerous behavior pattern in a dog that would otherwise be euthanized, is nowhere to be seen. Back at the courthouse steps, Cesar continues, "That dog now lives peacefully with a family who adores him. He plays with their children. He would have been euthanized if not for the rehabilitation techniques I used. Techniques now labeled as cruel by people who never witnessed the full process." He gestures toward a couple standing nearby with a calm, gentle pit bull wearing a service dog vest. "Ranger's owners are here today. This is the dog from that video, the same dog that prosecution witnesses testified was irredeemably dangerous and abused by my methods. I invite any of you to meet him now and see the results for yourselves." Reporters cautiously approach as the couple encourages Ranger to demonstrate his training. The dog performs flawlessly, his gentle temperament belying his traumatic past. "6 different trainers told us to euthanize him," the woman explains tearfully. "Cesar was our last hope. Now Ranger helps our son, who has autism. He can sense when our boy is about to have a meltdown and interrupts the pattern. He saved our family in more ways than one." Cesar's longtime colleague Sam rushes up, whispering urgently in his ear. News has just broken that the judge in his case has familial connections to the corporate entity that recently launched a competing dog training franchise. The conflict of interest is blatant, yet somehow overlooked by the court. We can file an appeal immediately, Sam insists. This is grounds for dismissal of the entire case. Cesar's expression doesn't change. Despite this new information confirming his suspicions about the motivations behind his persecution, he refuses to stoop to accusations in this public forum. I came to America with nothing but a dream and my understanding of dog psychology. I slept on the streets and washed in dog grooming tubs before finding success. This country gave me opportunities I never imagined possible in Sinaloa. He pauses, emotion finally breaking through his composed exterior. And now, some would take that away because my methods aren't trendy, because I speak uncomfortable truths about discipline and boundaries in an age when those concepts have fallen out of favor. But the dogs know. The dogs have always known what they need. Victoria, a former client, pushes through the crowd with her autistic son and their service dog, a formerly aggressive German shepherd that Cesar rehabilitated after other trainers had recommended euthanasia. "This man saved more than our dog," she announces to the reporters. "Our son hadn't spoken in 3 years before Cesar helped us bring balance to our household. The dog responded first, then miraculously, so did our child. How can they sentence someone who creates such healing?" As if on cue, dozens of former clients begin to emerge from the crowd, each with their own story. A veteran with PTSD whose service dog gave him back his life. An elderly woman whose rehabilitated rescue dog became her reason to live after losing her husband. A former gang member who found legitimate employment through Cesar's training program when no one else would hire him. A woman in a wheelchair approaches, her service dog maintaining perfect position beside her. "Before Cesar, I was homebound. My mobility issues meant I couldn't control an energetic dog, but I needed service animal assistance. Traditional trainers said I wasn't physically capable of establishing leadership. Cesar showed me that energy transcends physical limitations, that even from this chair, I could project the calm, assertive energy needed to lead my dog. He didn't just train my service animal, he empowered me to maintain that training independently." A police canine handler steps forward in uniform. "Our department consulted with Cesar on several dogs that were on the verge of washing out of the program due to specific behavioral issues. His insights saved the careers of 5 dogs that have since been instrumental in life-saving operations. One of those dogs located a kidnapped child last year. That child is alive today because Cesar's methods kept a valuable dog working instead of being decommissioned." A veterinarian in scrubs approaches the microphone. "I've referred my most difficult cases to Cesar for years. Dogs that would otherwise be euthanized for behavioral issues have been successfully rehabilitated through his methods. As a medical professional, I evaluate results, not ideologies, and the results speak for themselves." Still, despite this outpouring of support, the judge's ruling stands. Cesar must dismantle the training empire he built from nothing, the center that has saved countless dogs from euthanasia and given hope to families at the end of their rope. Meanwhile, inside a sleek corporate office across town, executives celebrate. The footage plays on a large screen. Cesar's momentary corrective touch with the pit bull, slowed down, the before and after context completely removed. "That's another competitor eliminated," says a suited executive raising his champagne glass. "Our new training franchise launches next month. The publicity from this case has been worth millions in advertising we didn't have to pay for." His colleague looks uncomfortable. "But we've seen the unedited footage. He saved that dog's life." Everyone who's worked with aggressive dogs knows that sometimes a corrective touch is necessary to interrupt dangerous behavior. "Public perception is reality," the executive replies dismissively. "And the public wants feel-good methods that don't acknowledge the harder truths about rehabilitation. Millan was bad for business with his old-school emphasis on discipline and boundaries." A younger team member speaks up hesitantly. "But what about all those testimonials from his clients? The success stories? The transformed dogs?" "Anecdotal evidence," the executive waves dismissively. "Our marketing department can produce just as many testimonials. The difference is, our methods never risk negative publicity because they never acknowledge that sometimes rehabilitation requires discomfort. We're selling an illusion that dog training should always be easy and look good on camera. Millan was too honest for this business." Back at the courthouse, Cesar addresses his supporters one final time. "This sentence means I must say goodbye to Los Angeles, the city that welcomed me as an immigrant with nothing but determination. But it is not goodbye forever to my mission." His phone rings. It's the governor of Arizona. Word of the conflict of interest has reached state officials there, and they're offering Cesar an opportunity. A state-sponsored rehabilitation center focusing especially on service dogs for veterans and children with special needs. As Cesar listens to the offer, a small smile forms. He ends the call and faces the crowd again. America is still a place where the truth eventually prevails. While one door closes today, another has already opened. My work will continue. Just not here. Not now. His loyal staff surrounds him, many in tears but all nodding in solidarity. They've already decided to relocate with him, to continue the mission they believe in so deeply. To those who sought to silence me with edited videos and corporate influence, I say this: dogs don't lie. Results don't lie. The thousands of rehabilitated animals and healed families don't lie. You may have won this battle, but the mission continues. That night, at his soon-to-be dismantled training center, Cesar meets with his core team. The mood is somber but determined. I won't ask any of you to uproot your lives, he tells them. I understand if you need to find other positions here in Los Angeles. Maria, his operations manager for 15 years, steps forward. With all due respect, Cesar, we've already discussed this among ourselves. Where you go, we go. This mission has never been just about you. It's about the dogs, the families, the truth of what works. We're not abandoning that because of some corrupt judge and edited video. The others nod in agreement. Carlos, a former gang member who found purpose rehabilitating aggressive dogs after serving prison time, speaks up. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw past my record to my energy, my potential. We all feel the same way. We're going to Arizona. Tears fill Cesar's eyes as he looks around at these people who believe in him, in the work, in the mission that's bigger than any individual. Then we begin again, he says simply, stronger for having been tested. The process of shutting down the Los Angeles Center is painful. Dogs in various stages of rehabilitation must be placed with appropriate handlers. Families counting on Cesar's help must be referred elsewhere or invited to make the journey to Arizona. Equipment must be sold or transported. Throughout it all, Cesar maintains his dignity, never publicly attacking the judge or the corporate interests that orchestrated his downfall. But he doesn't go quietly either. He documents everything, collecting testimonials, before and after videos, evidence of the conflict of interest. Justice may be delayed, but he ensures it won't be denied forever. 3 months later, Cesar stands at the center of a sprawling new facility in Arizona. The desert landscape stretches in all directions, its austere beauty a fitting backdrop for the work of rehabilitation that will happen here. This land teaches us something important, he tells his team as they prepare to open. Survival requires adaptation. The creatures that thrive here aren't the strongest or the most aggressive. They're the ones most responsive to their environment, most willing to adjust their behavior to reality. The first dogs arrive, 20 scheduled for euthanasia due to severe behavioral issues. With them come veterans with PTSD, selected for a pilot program combining their own rehabilitation with that of the dogs. The synchronicity is intentional. Humans healing alongside animals, each serving as the other's motivation and mirror. Captain James Miller, who lost both legs in Afghanistan, works with a German shepherd that panics at loud noises, a reflection of his own hypervigilance. We're healing each other, he explains to a documentary crew allowed to film the process. When I need to project calm energy for his sake, I have to find that calm within myself first. It's changing me from the inside out. The corporate training franchise that celebrated his downfall launches as scheduled, with slick commercials promising pain-free, stress-free training for any dog, regardless of history or behavioral issues. Their methods work adequately for already stable dogs needing basic obedience but fail spectacularly with truly traumatized or aggressive animals. Complaints begin to mount. Dogs regress or develop new issues. The quick fixes promised in the marketing materials prove ephemeral at best, dangerous at worst. Meanwhile, in Arizona, Cesar's evidence-based, psychologically sound approach continues to produce results. The success stories accumulate. Dogs deemed hopeless now serving as therapy animals, veterans finding purpose and healing, Families reunited with pets they'd nearly lost to behavioral crises. A reporter who originally covered his sentencing visits the new center, astonished by what she finds. "You could have fought the ruling, exposed the conflict of interest," she observes as they tour the facility. "Why didn't you?" Cesar watches a formerly aggressive dog now calmly playing with a child who has severe autism. The transformation in both is remarkable. "Fighting negative energy only creates more negativity," he explains. "I chose to redirect that energy into something positive, just as I teach with dogs. The results speak for themselves." He gestures toward a bulletin board covered with before and after photos and testimonials from grateful families. This is not the work of someone who deserves to be sentenced and cast out. This is the work of someone who understands a truth many find uncomfortable: that love without discipline is chaos, that boundaries create security, that leadership provides freedom. The reporter studies him carefully. "So, when the judge said goodbye forever to your work in Los Angeles..." Cesar smiles, his characteristic calm, assertive energy undimmed by the ordeal he's endured. "He actually opened the door to something greater. Sometimes what looks like an ending is really a beginning. The dogs taught me that. They never dwell on past injustice. They live in the present moment, and in this moment, we are doing more good than ever before." The Arizona facility quickly becomes a beacon of excellence, drawing clients from across the country and even internationally. Veterinarians refer their most difficult cases. Shelters send their most unadoptable dogs. Families arrive desperate for help with animals they love, but can no longer safely manage. 6 months into the new operation, a particularly challenging case arrives. A Doberman named Shadow with such severe aggression that he's been kept muzzled for 2 years. His owner's sleeping in shifts to ensure he doesn't escape and injure someone. 3 different veterinarians have recommended euthanasia. 5 trainers have refused to work with him. "This dog isn't aggressive because of his nature," Cesar explains to the owners after his initial assessment. "He's aggressive because he's living in a constant state of anxiety without clear leadership. His attacks are preemptive strikes motivated by fear, not dominance." The rehabilitation process is lengthy and intensive, requiring the owners to completely change their energy and approach. 2 months later, Shadow shows remarkable progress, still requiring careful management, but no longer living in a state of constant fight or flight. By month 4, he's relaxed enough to pass the Canine Good Citizen test, an achievement his owners had thought impossible. A video documenting Shadow's transformation goes viral, drawing attention back to Cesar's work and prompting renewed scrutiny of the court case that forced him out of California. As they walk through the facility, a delivery arrives, a letter from the California State Bar Association announcing an investigation into the judge who sentenced him, prompted by evidence of the conflict of interest. Justice moves slowly, but it moves. Cesar doesn't celebrate the news. He simply tucks the letter away and returns to working with a traumatized shepherd mix. The dog makes a breakthrough, finally allowing human touch without flinching. "This," Cesar says quietly. "This moment, right here. This is why no sentence could ever make me say goodbye forever to my purpose." Some callings transcend legal rulings and corporate agendas. Some truths cannot be silenced, no matter how inconvenient they may be to those who profit from easier answers. The shepherd cautiously licks his hand, the first sign of trust from an animal that had known only cruelty from humans. Cesar's eyes fill with tears, not from the injustice he faced, but from the beauty of this simple moment of healing. "Not goodbye," he whispers to the dog. "Just a new beginning for both of us." The months pass, and Cesar's Arizona center thrives despite occasional protests from activist groups that oppose his methods without ever witnessing them firsthand.
Linda Martinez spent her life rescuing dogs that others had given up on. The 62-year-old former veterinary assistant had converted her modest Arizona home into a sanctuary for elderly and special needs dogs, caring for animals that shelters deemed unadoptable. Despite limited resources, Linda had saved over 200 dogs throughout her lifetime, rehabilitating and finding homes for most, while providing hospice care for those who couldn't be placed. Her small ranch on the outskirts of Tucson had become known locally as the Last Chance Ranch, where Linda, with her remarkable intuition for canine behavior, worked miracles with dogs that professional trainers had deemed hopeless. She didn't have formal training or certifications, just a lifetime of experience and an extraordinary connection with troubled animals. For years, Linda had followed the career of Cesar Millan, the world-renowned dog whisperer. She had watched every episode of his shows, read his books, and implemented many of his techniques in her own rehabilitation work. Cesar's philosophy about energy and psychology had transformed her approach to working with traumatized dogs. Though they had never met, Linda considered him a mentor from afar. In early 2023, Linda received devastating news. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer had spread throughout her body. The prognosis was grim. Doctors gave her just months to live. Her immediate concern wasn't for herself, but for the 8 special needs dogs currently in her care. With no family members able to take on these challenging cases, Linda faced the heartbreaking task of finding new homes for her beloved companions before she could no longer care for them. Linda's close friend and local veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Jenkins, helped spread the word about the dogs needing homes. They created social media posts featuring each dog's story, special needs, and personality. The community responded with overwhelming support, and within weeks, 7 of the 8 dogs had been placed in appropriate homes with experienced owners. But one dog remained. Maximus, a 120-pound cane corso with severe anxiety and fear-based aggression towards strangers. Abandoned at a kill shelter after attacking his previous owner, Maximus had been scheduled for euthanasia when Linda intervened 3 years earlier. Through patient work and boundaries, Linda had gained his complete trust, but Maximus remained deeply suspicious of anyone else. His size, breed, and behavioral issues made him virtually unadoptable. As Linda's condition deteriorated, she made a difficult decision. She recorded a series of video messages for friends, family, and the new owners of her rescued dogs. In her weakened state, she spoke from her heart about each animal she had loved, offering advice and sharing memories. Her final video was different, addressed to Cesar Millan himself. Though she had no expectation he would ever see it, Linda wanted to express her gratitude for how his teachings had influenced her work. In the emotional 8-minute message, she explained how his methods had helped her save countless dogs, including Maximus. "I've never met you, Cesar, but you've been with me every day as I've worked with these abandoned souls," she said, her voice thin but determined. "What I couldn't solve on my own, I solved by asking myself, what would Cesar do? Now I'm leaving this world with just one failure. I couldn't help Maximus find a new home, and I'm haunted by what will happen to him after I'm gone." Dr. Jenkins was so moved by the video that she decided to share it on social media, tagging Cesar Millan's official accounts with the caption, "A dying woman's final message to the man who inspired her lifelong mission to save dogs others had given up on." The video quickly gained traction online, with thousands of shares as dog lovers across the country were touched by Linda's story. Local news stations picked it up, featuring segments about her years of rescue work and the uncertain fate of Maximus. 3 weeks later, as Linda's health rapidly declined, she entered hospice care. Her remaining dog Maximus was temporarily staying with Dr. Jenkins, though the arrangement was proving difficult due to his severe trust issues. The massive dog had barely eaten since being separated from Linda, and his anxiety had intensified. On a Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Jenkins received an unexpected call from someone claiming to represent Cesar Millan, stating that he had seen Linda's video and wanted to help. Assuming it was a cruel prank, she nearly hung up until the caller provided details that verified the request was legitimate. Cesar himself had been deeply moved by Linda's story and was flying to Arizona the following day. When Dr. Jenkins told Linda the news during her evening hospice visit, the dying woman initially thought the medication was causing hallucinations. "Cesar is coming here? To see me?" she asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in weeks, Linda's face lit up with something beyond the pain and worry that had become her constant companions. The following afternoon, nurses helped Linda into a wheelchair in the hospice center's garden area. Though frail and requiring oxygen, she insisted on sitting up properly for this momentous meeting. waiting. When a black SUV pulled into the parking lot and Cesar Millan emerged, Linda's hands trembled with emotion. Cesar approached quietly, with the calm, assertive energy he was known for. Without words, he knelt beside her wheelchair and took her hands in his. "Linda," he said gently, "I'm honored to meet someone who has done so much for dogs that others forgot." For the next hour, they talked as if they were old friends reuniting. Linda shared stories of her most challenging cases, and Cesar listened intently, occasionally asking questions about her techniques. What struck everyone present was how he treated her not as a dying fan, but as a respected colleague in the work of rehabilitating troubled dogs. "Now," Cesar said finally, "tell me about Maximus." Linda's eyes filled with tears as she described the powerful dog who had become her most loyal companion, explaining his background and the specific triggers for his fear-based aggression. "He's my heart dog, Cesar, the one I couldn't solve completely, and now I'm leaving him behind." Cesar nodded thoughtfully. "Would you allow me to meet him?" Dr. Jenkins arranged for Maximus to be brought to a fenced area adjacent to the hospice center's garden. The massive dog arrived anxious and alert, pulling strongly against his leash as a shelter volunteer struggled to control him. When Maximus spotted Linda, he strained toward her, whining with evident distress at her weakened condition. What happened next astonished everyone present. Cesar asked for the leash and approached Maximus with a calm authority that seemed to immediately capture the dog's attention. Within minutes, using only subtle body language and quiet energy, Cesar had established a connection with the dog that others had spent months trying to build. Linda watched in amazement as Cesar worked with Maximus, demonstrating techniques and explaining his observations aloud for her benefit. "He's not aggressive by nature," Cesar explained. "He's protective and insecure. He needs boundaries and leadership from someone who won't be intimidated by his size." After nearly an hour of working with the dog, Cesar turned to Linda. "I believe I can help him," he said simply, "if you'll trust me with him." Linda's hand flew to her mouth as she realized what he was offering. "You would take him?" Cesar nodded. "Not permanently. I have a network of trained rehabilitators who work with cases like this, but I'll personally oversee his rehabilitation and placement. I promise you, he won't be euthanized, and he won't live in a kennel. We'll find him a home with someone who understands him." For the first time since her diagnosis, Linda wept openly, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. "I can go in peace now," she whispered. But Cesar wasn't finished. He explained that he had been filming the final season of his latest show and wanted to document Maximus's rehabilitation journey as a special tribute episode. "Your work deserves to be recognized," he told Linda. "Your methods, your compassion. People need to see what one person can accomplish with nothing but dedication and love for animals." In the following days, Cesar's production team interviewed Linda's friends, former adopters, and veterinarians who had worked with her over the years. They gathered photos and videos of the hundreds of dogs she had saved, creating a comprehensive portrait of her lifelong dedication. Cesar visited Linda daily during his week in Arizona, often bringing Maximus, who was already showing remarkable improvement under his guidance. Each day, he demonstrated new progress with the dog and taught Linda techniques she had never considered, treating their sessions as collaborations rather than lessons. On his final day before returning to California, Cesar arrived at the hospice center with news. "We found the perfect home for Maximus," he told Linda, a retired canine police officer with experience handling protection breeds. "He lives on 5 fenced acres and works with service dogs for veterans with PTSD." Linda smiled weakly, her condition having deteriorated rapidly in recent days. "That sounds perfect," she whispered. Cesar then revealed something that would become the unthinkable act referenced in headlines across the country. His foundation was establishing the Linda Martinez Rescue Fund with an initial donation of $50,000. The fund would provide grants to small, independent rescuers working with last chance dogs, cases that most shelters and organizations deemed too difficult or expensive to rehabilitate. "Your work won't end when you leave us," Cesar told her, holding her frail hand. "It will continue through others who share your dedication." 2 days later, Linda Martinez passed away peacefully, knowing that her beloved Maximus would be cared for and that her legacy would continue through Cesar's foundation. At her memorial service the following week, attendees were surprised to see Cesar Millan sitting quietly in the back row, having flown in specifically to pay his respects. The tribute episode, titled Linda's Legacy, aired 3 months later. It began with Maximus's successful placement in his new home and told the story of the remarkable woman who had inspired Cesar Cesar with her quiet, dedicated work saving dogs others had abandoned. The episode concluded with an announcement that the Linda Martinez Rescue Fund had already helped save 15 unadoptable dogs through grants to small rescuers nationwide. The story of Cesar's unexpected appearance and his promise to a dying woman touched millions of viewers, bringing attention to the countless unsung heroes working in animal rescue across the country. Applications to the fund poured in, and donations expanded its reach beyond anyone's expectations. 1 year after Linda's passing, Cesar hosted a special event at his dog psychology center, bringing together 20 rescuers who had received grants from the Linda Martinez Fund. Among them was Dr. Jenkins, who had been inspired to continue Linda's work with special needs dogs in Arizona. As the rescuers shared stories and techniques, Maximus made a special appearance with his new owner, now working as a therapy dog for veterans, a transformation that even Cesar admitted had exceeded his expectations. In his closing remarks that day, Cesar reflected on the unexpected friendship that had formed in Linda's final days. "Sometimes the student becomes the teacher," he said. "Linda reminded me why I began this work, not for fame or television, but because every dog deserves a chance, and every person who dedicates their life to giving them that chance deserves our support." The Linda Martinez Rescue Fund continues to grow, becoming one of the most respected grant programs for independent rescuers working with challenging cases. In rescue circles, recipients are affectionately known as Linda's legacy, ordinary people doing extraordinary work with dogs others have given up on. As for Maximus, the once unadoptable dog now regularly visits hospitals and veteran centers, his calm, gentle demeanor showing no traces of his troubled past. His new owner often tells Linda's story, explaining how a dying woman's love and a dog trainer's compassion changed the course of many lives, both human and canine. In an industry often plagued by competition for limited resources, Linda's story inspired a new wave of collaboration among rescuers, trainers, and veterinarians. Her final message, meant simply as a goodbye to someone she admired from afar, ultimately created a movement that expanded the definition of what makes a dog adoptable and who deserves support in the vital work of saving them. Cesar Millan, for his part, refers to meeting Linda as one of the most profound experiences of his career. "She reminded me that the most important work often happens quietly, without cameras or recognition," he said in a later interview. "Sometimes the greatest dog whisperers are the ones we never hear about until they're gone." The unthinkable act reported in headlines wasn't just Cesar's financial commitment or his rehabilitation of Maximus. It was his recognition that expertise doesn't always come with certificates or fame. By elevating Linda's work to national attention, he acknowledged the countless unsung heroes who work miracles with abandoned animals every day, often with limited resources and no formal training. Linda's legacy lives on not just through the fund bearing her name, but through the ripple effect of compassion and dedication she inspired. A fitting memorial for a woman who spent her life speaking for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Homeless man asked Cesar Millan for $1. His response is shocking. Miguel Sanchez had been living on the streets of Los Angeles for nearly 3 years. The former construction worker had lost everything after a severe back injury left him unable to work, quickly followed by a divorce that drained his savings. His only companion was a small scruffy terrier mix named Blanco, who had found Miguel one rainy night huddled under a highway overpass. Miguel often went hungry himself to ensure Blanco had food, recognizing that the dog's unwavering loyalty had kept him from giving up entirely. On a warm spring morning in 2023, Miguel sat on a bench near Echo Park Lake, watching a film crew set up nearby. He immediately recognized Cesar Millan, the world-famous dog whisperer, directing the setup. For several hours, Miguel observed as Cesar worked with different dogs and their owners, demonstrating the techniques that had made him a household name. As filming wrapped up and the crew began packing equipment, Miguel found himself drawn toward the area. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since the previous evening. Without fully understanding his own motivation, he approached Cesar as the trainer walked toward his vehicle. "Excuse me," Miguel said softly in Spanish. "Could you spare $1 for some food? For me and my dog?" The words had tumbled out before Miguel could reconsider, and he immediately immediately felt ashamed. He had never directly asked a stranger for money before, usually preferring to offer some service in exchange for assistance. Cesar stopped, his attention immediately drawn to Blanco, who sat calmly beside his owner. The small dog's demeanor was remarkably balanced, neither fearful nor aggressive, despite the obvious signs that he lived on the streets. "Your dog is very well balanced," Cesar said in Spanish, surprising Miguel by ignoring the request for money. "Many dogs in your situation become protective or anxious. He trusts you completely." "Blanco found me, not the other way around," Miguel replied. "I think he knew I needed him." Cesar studied Miguel with the same attentive gaze he typically reserved for evaluating dogs. "When was the last time you both ate?" "I had some breakfast at the shelter this morning," Miguel answered honestly. "Blanco finished his food last night. I was hoping to find work today to buy more dog food." "I'm not going to give you $1, Cesar said, causing Miguel's heart to sink. But then he continued, "Instead, I'd like to invite you both to join me for a meal, and I have some questions about how you've trained your dog." Minutes later, Miguel found himself sitting in a nearby taco restaurant with Cesar Millan. As they ate, Cesar asked about his life and relationship with Blanco. Miguel explained how the dog had appeared during his darkest moment, when he had contemplated ending his life after losing everything. "He saved my life," Miguel said simply, "so I try to give him the best life I can, even with nothing." Cesar observed how Blanco remained calm and attentive, exhibiting what he called balanced energy, despite his uncertain circumstances. "Your situation is difficult," Cesar acknowledged, "but you've maintained your dignity and calm energy, and your dog reflects that. Many wealthy people with every resource cannot achieve what you have with Blanco." When Miguel shared his background, his immigration from Mexico, his years in construction, and the injury that had derailed his life, Cesar listened attentively. As they finished their meal, Cesar surprised him with an unexpected proposal. "I'm currently filming a new series about unique bonds between dogs and humans in difficult circumstances," Cesar explained. "Your relationship with Blanco is exactly the kind of story I want to tell. Would you be willing to be part of the show?" Miguel was stunned. "Me? But I have nothing to offer." "That's where you're wrong," Cesar replied. "You have something many dog owners never achieve: a perfectly balanced relationship with your dog despite extremely challenging circumstances." Cesar then made an offer that would change Miguel's life. Not only would he be compensated for appearing in the episode, but Cesar would also help him find stable housing and connect him with medical professionals for his back injury. In return, Cesar asked Miguel to consider working with his foundation once he was back on his feet. "Sometimes life takes everything from us to reveal our true purpose," Cesar said. "I believe your purpose involves working with dogs, just as mine does. Why would you do this for a stranger who just asked you for $1? Miguel asked, bewildered. "Many years ago, when I first came to America with nothing, there were people who saw something in me worth investing in. They didn't just give me money, they gave me opportunity. I believe in passing that forward," Cesar explained. "Also, I trust what dogs tell me, and Blanco has told me everything I need to know about your character." The following weeks transformed Miguel's life. With Cesar's support, he moved into a small apartment that allowed pets and began physical therapy for his back. Most importantly, he started learning about dog behavior and training, with Cesar personally mentoring him. The episode featuring Miguel and Blanco aired 3 months later as the season premiere of Cesar's new series. The audience response was overwhelming, with viewers touched by the authentic connection between man and dog, and by Cesar's compassionate intervention. As Miguel's back improved with proper treatment, Cesar offered him a position at his dog psychology center, where Miguel discovered a natural talent for working with traumatized dogs. Animals that had suffered abuse or neglect responded to his gentle approach. Perhaps, as Cesar suggested, because Miguel understood trauma firsthand. Within a year, Miguel had become one of the center's most valued rehabilitation specialists. He and Blanco moved into a small house with a yard, leaving homelessness behind. Miguel often reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with the simple request for a single dollar. Eventually, Miguel launched a nonprofit initiative called Second Chance Paws, which paired homeless individuals with rescue dogs, providing support for both. The program was based on his belief that caring for an animal could provide purpose for people struggling with homelessness, while giving abandoned dogs the love they needed. On the one-year anniversary of their chance meeting, Miguel and Cesar returned to the same taco restaurant. As they reflected on the changes in Miguel's life, Cesar shared something he hadn't previously revealed. "When you approached me that day," he said, "I was actually considering ending my television career. After so many years, I was questioning whether I was still making a real difference or just becoming another celebrity brand." Miguel was surprised. "But your work helps millions of people and dogs. Meeting you and Blanco reminded me why I started this journey, not for fame, but because I believe in the healing power of the connection between humans and dogs." Cesar explained, "You asked me for $1, but you gave me something much more valuable. You renewed my purpose." Today, Miguel Sanchez is no longer defined by what he lost, but by what he found. A new career, renewed purpose, and a platform to help others experiencing the hopelessness he once felt. And it all began with a simple request for $1. Met with a response that recognized the value of human potential and the wisdom of a small, street-smart dog named Blanco. The shocking response that made headlines wasn't just Cesar's unexpected generosity, but his ability to see beyond Miguel's circumstances to his untapped potential, recognizing in a homeless man the same innate gifts that had once allowed a young immigrant named Cesar Millan to become the world's most famous dog trainer.